Chapter 15. The Many Paths of Yoga. Yoga offers several methods of attaining clarity of mind, each with its own emphasis. In the Bhagavad Gita alone, 18 different forms of yoga are named. I shall discuss the following nine: Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Mantra Yoga, Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, Kriya Yoga, Tantra Yoga, Kundalini Yoga, and Hatha Yoga. Jnana Yoga. Jnana means knowledge. Jnana Yoga describes the search for real knowledge. Traditionally, this search begins by listening to the words of a teacher who explains the old yoga text to his or her students. This is followed by reflection, discussion with others, and clarification of doubtful points, which leads to the gradual recognition of the truth and merging with it. The underlying assumption of Jnana Yoga is that all knowledge lies hidden within us, we only have to discover it. The Yoga Sutra says that the moment the mind is freed from the bonds of avidya, jnana occurs spontaneously. Previously, it was locked in and therefore unavailable to us. The state in which this true understanding occurs is none other than samadhi. Jnana is the way to samadhi. Bhakti Yoga. The term bhakti comes from the root bhaj, which means to serve. It does not mean to serve a person, however, but rather to serve a power greater than ourselves. This is the idea discussed in connection with the practice of Ishvara Pranidhana. By whatever means in Bhakti Yoga we serve the Divine Being, which is the ultimate source of help and guidance. Following Bhakti Yoga, we offer all our thoughts and actions to this higher power. In everything we see and in every other human being, we recognize God, truth. We act out of a conviction that we are serving God. We always carry His name within us. We meditate on Him. We go into His temples. We are completely devoted to Him. That is Bhakti Yoga. Mantra Yoga. A mantra can be a single syllable, such as Ram, a number of syllables, or a whole verse. One of the most often used definition of mantra is something that protects the person who has received it. It is not something we can find in a book or buy somewhere. Traditionally, a mantra is given to a student by a teacher at the time when the teacher knows exactly what the student needs. This process can take years. A mantra given in any other way may perhaps show some results at first, but they will not last. The mantra receives a special meaning and power through the way it is given and the way it is put together. Often, there is a special image, either real or imaginary, that is linked to the mantra and visualized while the words are repeated. If we are aware of its meaning and maintain a practice over a period of time, repeating the mantra as we were taught, mantra yoga can have the same effect as jnana yoga or bhakti yoga. Raja Yoga. The translation of the word Raj or Raja is king. In the context of Raja Yoga, it describes a king who is always in the state of enlightenment. The king stands for something in us that is more than what we usually consider ourselves to be. Raja can also refer to the divine being or the power mentioned in connection with Bhakti Yoga. The way toward accepting the existence of Isvara, is often described as Raja Yoga. In this respect, God or Ishwar is then the king referred to by the word Raja. In the Vedas, we find many uses of the word Raj, Raja in connection with Ishwar. There are other definitions of Raja Yoga for those who do not want to link it to Ishwar. You can say that there is a king in each of us. We understand this concept as Purusha. The Purusha, or the king within, normally remains hidden by our everyday actions. It is concealed by the workings of the mind, which is driven this way and that by sensual impressions, memories, and fantasies. It is avidya, of course, which conceals a purusha so that many of us are unaware of its existence. When this process is reversed and the mind becomes master of the senses, we find clarity and peace, and our purusha can take the place it rightfully should have. Whether the king is Purusha or Ishvara, Raja Yoga refers to the kind of yoga where the king takes his rightful place. In the Yoga Sutra, it says that when there is no more restlessness in the mind, Purusha will unfold and see what is that is Raja Yoga. Karma Yoga. Karma is action. The Bhagavad Gita ascribes a central place to Karma Yoga, stating that in life we can only act, but we should not affected by the results of our action. If the fruits of our efforts do not correspond to our expectations, we should not be disappointed, for the effort itself is often imperfect. Our actions should indeed never be determined by any expectations, for we can never be sure of results of our actions. We should also not take the credit when things turn out well, for we are not necessarily personally responsible for successes any more than we are responsible for failures. And it could well be that we see things in different light tomorrow. We must involve ourselves through action, but leave the rest to God and expect nothing. This is the explanation of Karma Yoga given in Bhagavad Gita, and this definition corresponds to that Ishwar Pranidhana in chapter 2 of Yoga Sutra. Kriya Yoga. There are many different ideas about the definition of Kriya Yoga. The Yoga Sutra describes it as the whole spectrum of practices known as yoga. Everything that we can actually practice is Kriya Yoga, and the Yoga Sutra names three aspects that together define Kriya Yoga: tapas, swadhyay, and Ishvara Pranidhana. Tapas are practices such as asana and pranayam that can help us remove the blocks and tensions, both physical and mental. Swadhyay means searching, asking questions, looking into ourselves. And Ishvara Pranidhana, as explained above, is action not motivated by outcome. When these three aspects are linked together in our practice, we are on the Kriya Yoga path. Hatha, Kundalini, and Tantra Yoga. If we want to understand Hatha, Kundalini, and Tantra Yoga, we must look closely at a concept that is central to all three, namely the concept of Kundalini. The fundamental idea shared by all types of yoga that talk about Kundalini is that there are certain channels or nadi in the body through which prana can enter and leave. There are many nadi, but in the concept context of Kundalini, we need only concern ourselves with the three most important ones: Ida, Pingal, Pingala, and Susumna, all three of which run along the spine. Susumna runs straight up to the spinal column, whereas Ida and Pingala cross over the spinal column and back a number of times. The Ida Nadi passes the left nostril and the Pingala Nadi passes the right nostril. Both have other names such as Ha and Tha, the two syllables that make up the word Hatha. Ha represents Ida, the cool energy of the moon, Chandra. Tha represents Pingala and the hot energy of the sun. The nadi, the nadi need at the 6 points in the body recognized in the chakras. Figure 33 shows the locations of the chakras along the central axis of the spine. There is one between the eyebrows, one in the throat, one in the heart region, one in the navel, one just above the base of the trunk, and one at the base of the spine. Ideally, prana flows unhinged along all these passages, but this can only happen when they are not blocked by impurities and rubbish. Normally, prana cannot reach Susumna but only follows through the Ida, Ha, and Pingala, Tha, Nadi, and often insufficiently at that. When it is possible for the prana to enter the Susumna Nadi, prana of Ha and the unite yoga, which is why we call the process of getting there Hatha Yoga. The Susumna and a central nadi is regarded as the ideal path for prana. If prana flows through this central passage, it is concentrated in the body to such a large degree that its effects can spread throughout the body in an ideal way. None of it gets lost outside the body. When I was describing the purpose and the effect of pranayam, I said that the state in which prana leaks out of the body is one in which avidya prevails. How and where prana flows in the body, therefore, has direct consequences for our state of mind. If we cannot keep enough prana in a nadi, it blocks, hinders its flow, and it cannot keep flowing in the right direction. It dissipates outside the body and results in the mind becoming dark, restless. Conversely, the collection of prana in the body brings about inner peace and true understanding. The free flow of prana in the Susumna is not normally possible because something blocks the passage. This block is symbolized by a coiled snake, the Kundalini. The concept of Kundalini is confused by many imprecise definitions, and even a text such as Hatha Yoga Pradipika contains contradictory descriptions of it. The definition that follows is derived from what, in my opinion, is the best and the clearest and the most coherent text on this subject. The Yoga Yajnavalkya, their Kundalini is defined unambiguously as an obstacle. What is to enter the Susamna at some stage or other through a yoga practice is, according to this text, not the Kundalini itself, but simply prana. Many books say that it is the Kundalini itself that rises up through the Susamna, but this does not make sense if we follow the Yoga Yajnavalkya, one of the oldest texts that deals with this aspect of yoga. One of his central concepts is that prana and the various forms it takes in the body are linked to the practice of yoga. And it says that if we are successful in our practice, the Kundalini is burned up and making the way clear of prana. A snake killed while lying in the coiled position unfolds and stretches out, the muscles no longer able to keep it coiled. It is said that when the fire in the body, Agni, has killed the snake, the Kundalini unrolls and the passage is open to the flow of prana. This does not happen overnight. Even when parts of Kundalini are destroyed, it remains capable of blocking Susamna for a long time. If you closely consider this image, it becomes clear that Kundalini is another way of depicting what we call avidya. In the same way that avidya can become so powerful that it totally prevents us from seeing Purusha, Kundalini blocks the prana and prevents it from rising through the Susumna. The moment the Kundalini is born, it is the same moment that avidya ceases to exist. The prana is able to enter the Susumna and slowly move upward. We can also understand Hatha Yoga as part of Raja Yoga, which is defined as a process in which prana, the friend of Purusha, gradually rises upward. When it gets to the top, Purusha unfolds and king within us emerges. When the emphasis is primarily on the concept of Kundalini, then we speak of the practice as Kundalini Yoga. Hatha Yoga is so named when a practice focuses on removing the division between Ha and Tha. Lastly, the term Tantra Yoga may be used in describing a yoga practice based on Kundalini. In Tantra Yoga, the emphasis is on certain energies that are normally squandered being directed in such a way that they can reduce the blocks that stand in the way of prana. The practices of Tantra Yoga are distinctive. Indeed, the word Tantra translates as technique. In the positive sense, meaning a skill or craft, in Tantra Yoga, the focus is on body and the wide range of connections and relationships between the body and the other aspects of the world and cosmos is made. Further thoughts on Kundalini. Question. I have read that the moment the Kundalini is freed, it feels like a powerful electric shock running through a cable. It is also said that if the cable is not strong enough for the current, it will burn out. This is dangerous and you must be prepared for it. Do you have any thoughts on this? It seems to me that Kundalini must be described in this way because it is surrounded by a lot of mystery and a lot of superstition. It seems mysterious because we cannot simply cut the body open and see this power. But if we can relate this power to prana, there is no longer anything mysterious about it. That is the beauty of texts such as Yoga Yajnavalkya. On the experience of rising the prana in Susumna, the Yoga Yajnavalkya quite simply says, how could I describe what a person when becomes aware of? There is no shock such as the one you describe. When someone sees the truth, the only shock is to have to see what he or she was before. There is no question of 1000-volt shock or the like. While it is good metaphor to describe the rising of Kundalini like this, it makes little sense to take it literally. If we were to say that Kundalini is an energy force that leads us to the truth, then we should also have to accept that there are two different types of energy existing side by side, prana and kundalini. Many of these ideas are based on superficial and inaccurate translations or the inability to explain unclear passages in certain texts. For this reason, these concepts and techniques must be explained by someone who has not only great wealth of practical experience and well-founded knowledge, but also considerable proficiency in Sanskrit, the language in which the texts are written. Very often there is lack of both. If we burn up Kundalini bit by bit, what does more prana gradually enter the Susumna? We must be careful that we do not go too far in using images to describe certain experiences. We should never forget that there are images and not the experience itself. Nevertheless, we could imagine it just exactly as you do. Sometimes we move into the state of mind which we could describe as dhyana or samadhi. Then we are back in the distracted state again. If the mind is without peace or clarity, the Kundalini is lying curled up, blocking Susumna. If the mind quiets, it is less obstructed by Kundalini, and we may perhaps experience a state of being in which the mind is operating solely on the level of clear sight and true understanding. All that really means is that prana is rising higher in the Susumna and can now freely through places that were previously blocked. According to Hatha Yoga, is the use of bandha the only way of moving the kundalini? No. If you read the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, for example, you will discover that none of the techniques given is the only one. Various methods are described in different chapters. The same is true for Kiranda Samhita and the Siva Samhita and the other classical texts. Many different suggestions are made therein. Question. Is it then the case that other kinds of yoga you have the same physical experience as in Kundalini? What is it like when avidya disappears? For someone who is, for example, following the path of Jnana Yoga and who becomes Jnani. If the mind is restless, there is no Jnana, no knowledge. The terms Ha and Tha are used for describing the extreme states of oscillating mind. The flow of prana solely into Ha and Tha shows a restless mind swinging back and forth between extremes. Prana is the susumna. Prana in the susumna, on the other hand, represents a clear, quiet mind. So a jnani is someone whose prana flows in the susumna. While other people, the flow of prana is still limited in a very imperfect way to the two opposing nadi, ha and tha. We must not let ourselves be confused by the way different schools of yoga describe the same process. Many of these things are described very clearly and explicitly in Yoga Sutra, but neither Ha nor Tha are mentioned in it. The Yoga Sutra considers these questions from fundamental position, showing us how little difference there really is between these various concepts. Primarily, it is the question of a state of mind. Whatever happens to the mind and causes a change in it affects the whole person, including the body and all experiences on the physical level. This is the basis of Yoga Sutra, which is a great guide if you want to understand all these things more fully. People often ask me if I teach asanas, and when I answer yes, there, you are Hatha Yogi. If I'm talking about Yoga Sutra, they say, oh, you're a Raja Yogi. And if I say recite the Vedas, the comment is, oh, you're a Mantra Yogi. If I simply say that I practice yoga, They do not know what to make of me. Many people want to give everything and everyone label. Unfortunately, these classifications have become much too important and give the impression that there are fundamental differences between the various forms of yoga. But really, they're all dealing with the same thing and are only looking at them from different perspectives. If we really follow one direction in yoga, as far as we can go, then it will lead us along all parts of yoga.